It was one of those nights when the city seemed enveloped in an almost surreal calmness. The streetlights cast long shadows on the silent streets, and the occasional sound of a passing car was almost comforting. I've always enjoyed walking at night. It's my time to disconnect from the world, to connect with myself. There's something reassuring about strolling through the sleeping streets, as if the weight of the day disappears with each step. These nighttime walks were like therapy for me, a way to clear my mind after a stressful day at work. On that particular night, I decided to take a different route. I had noticed a park in the distance for some time, but I had never ventured there before. I usually stuck to my usual routes, but curiosity got the better of me. Why not? I thought. The park seemed peaceful in the moonlight, and the idea of a new landscape excited me. The tall trees and the gentle sound of leaves rustling in the wind created a serene, inviting atmosphere. It seemed like the perfect place for a change in routine. As I approached, I noticed that the entrance to the park was partially hidden by overgrown bushes, as if few people ventured there. It must be even quieter, I thought, excited at the prospect of an even more silent and introspective environment. As I ventured further into the park, I noticed that something was different. The streetlights flickered sporadically, creating an almost hypnotic effect, like slow-motion twinkling lights. Every time a light flickered, my shadow danced on the ground in a disconcerting manner. My footsteps echoed strangely, as if the ground was hollow in some spots, producing a muffled sound that seemed to respond to each of my movements. The sensation of being watched began to creep in, a cold and unsettling feeling that seemed to clutch at my neck. I convinced myself it was just my imagination playing tricks. It's just a park, nothing more, I repeated to myself, trying to calm the growing unease tightening my chest. As I walked, I began to notice that the wind blew in a peculiar way, carrying with it a constant murmur, as if the leaves were whispering obscure secrets that I couldn't understand. The sound was hypnotic and disturbing at the same time, making me question if I was truly alone. With each step, the environment seemed to become more oppressive, as if an invisible hand was squeezing my heart. It's okay, it's just your mind playing tricks on you, I thought, trying to stay calm as I felt cold sweat trickling down my spine. But the feeling that something was wrong was hard to ignore. The park, which initially seemed welcoming and serene, now had a heavy, almost suffocating atmosphere. My instinct screamed that something was amiss, but my logic tried to rationalize. You're just tired, you've had a long day, I told myself, but the urgency to get out of there began to take over. Every noise, every shadowy movement, made my heart race. It was as if the park was alive, watching, waiting for me to make a mistake. The tension was palpable, and I felt like a puppet at the mercy of an invisible master. Suddenly, a sound pierced the silence. A muffled scream, distant but unmistakably human. That sound seemed to tear through the tranquility of the night, reverberating in the air and echoing in the shadows around me. My heart raced, and I stopped abruptly, as if my body had frozen in fear. The scream was short, but it carried a sense of desperation that sent chills down my spine. I looked around, trying to locate the source of the sound, but everything seemed too calm, as if the park itself was holding its breath, waiting for my reaction. Restlessness began to grow inside me, a suffocating sensation lodged in my chest. Should I investigate? Should I keep going? These questions swirled in my mind like a whirlwind. My natural instinct to help someone in danger battled against the growing fear that something very wrong was happening. My brain seemed divided between the need to offer assistance and the primal desire to flee and protect myself. What if someone is really in danger? I can't just ignore this, I thought, trying to find courage within myself. But fear was paralyzing, a shadow whispering for me to run and never look back. Is someone really in danger? What if it's just my imagination? I pondered, trying to decide what to do. Every second of indecision felt like an eternity, my heart pounding frantically as I struggled against the paralysis of panic. The sound was so disturbing that it couldn't be ignored, but every fiber of my being screamed for me to flee. I can't just ignore this. What if someone really needs help? I thought, taking hesitant steps toward where I believed the sound had come from. Each step felt like a battle against my own fears, my senses hyper-alert, capturing every rustle of leaves, every movement of shadows. As I advanced, a new wave of terror hit me. What if the scream was a trap? What if I was being lured into something terrible? My stomach churned at the thought, but I couldn't stop. Be brave, you can do this, I repeated to myself, trying to push away the dark thoughts. The night seemed darker and colder, and the path ahead, more unknown and menacing. The tension in the air was almost tangible, an oppressive presence that seemed to follow me as I moved forward. With each step, doubt and fear vied for control of my mind, creating a crescendo of anxiety that seemed to suffocate my rationality. Continuing with cautious steps, I spotted a figure standing under the light of a lamppost further ahead. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears like a war drum. The lamppost cast a long, distorted shadow of the figure, giving it a ghostly appearance. I approached slowly, my eyes desperately trying to discern details in the dim light, my mind trying to prepare for the worst. When I got closer, I realized it was a mannequin. But it wasn't just any mannequin. It was dressed in blood-stained clothes, and the realism of the scene made my stomach churn. The blood seemed fresh, dripping slightly from the torn garments. The mannequin was positioned in an almost natural way, as if it had been caught in a moment of panic. Every detail, from the vacant expression to the splatters of blood, was incredibly disturbing. Who would have put that there, and more importantly, why? With each step I took, the scene became more grotesque and inexplicable. It was as if someone had orchestrated that moment to scare off anyone who dared to venture there. Who would do such a thing? I thought, as adrenaline began to rush through my body. My mind raced, trying to process the scene before me. The sight of the bloodied mannequin was so disturbing that my brain refused to accept what my eyes saw. This can't be real, I told myself, trying to find a logical explanation for that bizarre scene. And maybe it's a sick prank, but who would do something so macabre? The presence of the mannequin there, under the flickering light of the lamppost, seemed to carry a sinister warning. The atmosphere around seemed to be filled with tangible malevolence, as if the park was trying to drive me away. My senses were on high alert, picking up every sound, every movement around me. The silence around me was oppressive, broken only by the sound of the wind in the leaves and the occasional drip of the fake, or was it real blood on the ground? The mannequin seemed almost alive in the twilight, every detail making the scene more surreal. The synthetic hair was tangled, and the glass eyes reflected the lamppost light, giving it a haunting look. The position of the arms and legs, the angle of the head, everything seemed carefully orchestrated to create the maximum horror possible. My mind began to imagine who could have done this, and the image of someone hidden in the shadows, watching my reaction, sent a cold shiver down my spine. I need to get out of here, I thought, but my legs felt glued to the ground. Adrenaline coursed through my veins, but fear was paralyzing. Every step backward was a struggle against the urge to turn and run without looking back. The scene before me was a living nightmare, and the feeling of being watched only heightened my terror. The night that had once seemed so calm was now fraught with invisible threats, and every shadow seemed to conceal an imminent danger. Beside the mannequin, a small wooden sign stuck in the ground caught my attention. In red letters, it read, "Turn around." A wave of panic swept through my body. Hesitant, I turned slowly, and to my horror, I saw a shadow disappearing among the trees. It was impossible to discern whether it was a person or something else. My survival instinct took over. The shadow seemed to move with a speed and lightness that was unnatural. My heart pounded in my chest, and I knew I needed to get out of there immediately. This isn't happening, this isn't happening, I repeated to myself as I spun toward the park exit. The sight of the shadow was enough to make my blood run cold. I can't stay here, I need to get out now, I thought as I began to run. Without a second thought, I began to run. My heart raced uncontrollably as I distanced myself from that place. Each step felt like a hammer pounding on my chest. I only stopped when I reached the main street again. I looked back, gasping for breath, and promised myself I would never return to that park at night. Since then, my life has never been the same. Nightmares are frequent, and the doubt about what really happened that night haunts me. Was it a sick prank or something more sinister? I'll never know. What I do know is that experience changed the way I see the world. And no matter how hard I try, I can't erase from my memory the image of that bloodied mannequin and the message it left me with a fear that seems to never disappear. Every night, when I try to sleep, I relive that moment and wonder what would have happened if I had stayed a little longer. Would it have just been a prank? Or was something much more sinister lurking?